Hey friends, it's Rob Smith. Thanks again for being here. On this clip, going to show you a little bit of a walkthrough about some of the very basics on the context platform, and that is related to the lens shapes, the actual framework shapes that we use, and try to explain a little bit about the differences between them. So to demonstrate that, I will, as usual, create a framework. As usual, all the frameworks on the left side, there's well over 100, I think, at this point. I mean, we really have a lot of different frameworks. But remember, what we're going to do today is we're going to just take a quick look at these actual differences between the lens shapes themselves. So remember what a framework does. A framework is a mental model, and it's basically something you're trying to achieve with looking at something in a particular way. So if I'm in my business and strategy bucket, I could look at an innovation adoption life cycle. That's a mental model that some people use. You could look at a KPIs map, key performance indicators, product roadmap, SWOT analysis. Like these are all pretty, sort of well-known things that you can do. There's research and academic tools, et cetera. So tons of mental models. The question is, even when you have that mental model, like how do you want to look at it? And that's where the lens shapes comes in. The lens shapes are actually different ways of using that exact same mental model, but sort of extruding the mental model into different shapes. And there's a reason why you might want to look at things in different ways. So if I start with a very simple one of our core insights frameworks, let's say the explain this framework, let me start with, okay, why did the Smiths break up? One of my favorite bands, sad day. So I'm asking this question, right? And what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I want you to explain this to me. And of course, I could go on to ChatGPT and I could do it, and it's probably fine. It'd give me a good answer. But what you do with context is you're actually refracting that into these shapes in a more sort of powerful and differentiated way. So what the four quadrants are doing uh, these are all pulled from some version of integral meta theory or these big picture ways of thinking about things. And the quadrants are going to give you a uh, basically the interior and the exterior of the individual and the collective. And so what this does is we can look at the interior of the individual, and that's the intentional or subjective psychological domain. And it's basically going to get into the psychology of what was going on in that area. So the personal rivalry and creative differences between Morrissey and Marr, right? Very sad. We can see in the upper right, the exterior of the individual, we can see that Johnny Marr's inquiry into new musical styles and his collaborations outside the band showcase his evolving musical interests. Pretty fascinating, right? In the lower left, this is the interior of the collective. This is like the culture of the band or the culture, the broader culture they're enmeshed in. Smiths operated within a cultural context that highly valued authenticity and integrity, creating pressures on the band to stay true to their original ethos while navigating growing fame. And there were differing personal values between Morrissey and Marr. Okay, fair enough. That's often what's going on in a breakup is it's occurring in this quadrant. And then in the exterior of the collective, it's talking about the industry, it's talking about the societal context, the audience reception, media scrutiny, etc. Now, this is really powerful because what it did very quickly for me is it differentiated this really pretty complex situation and dynamic into these four buckets so that now I have a kind of a better understanding of what was going on in these different domains. And it allows me to hold the complexity in an easier way. That's obviously what we get when we analyze it through the four quadrants. What if we recreate the exact same lens? I won't change the prompt at all, but what if we recreate it through levels? And we'll have to kind of see what happens. Now, why would I choose levels? Levels is taking basically a hierarchical approach. It's saying, look, I want to look at this exact same question. I want you to explain it to me, but I want you to think about it in hierarchical terms in some way. Now, I might describe what those hierarchical terms were, or I might let it do it. And so it has chosen, I let it choose, and it says, okay, level one, let's look at the surface explanation. Level two, let's look at the interpersonal dynamics. Level three, let's look at external pressures. And level four, let's look at legacy and the aftermath. Okay. And now it's going to go through a description of each of those things. Now, this may in fact not be that great of a context or a great of a question for this framework shape. If I was inquiring about like the differing needs that I have inside me, again, think about Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, well, then this is a much more powerful lens shape. It fits itself much more naturally to that, right? And so it's allowing you to make some judgments about the kind of shapes that you want to match to your context. A table is very simple, right? It's just a table. It's going to make decisions about, the AI is going to make decisions about, like, okay, here's the things that we care about in terms of one dimension, and here's another axis. And so here's the axes that it chose. Okay, there's like, here's some types of differences, creative differences, interpersonal differences, business differences. And then here's like primary, and then band member, and then external factors. And so by choosing to give it the ability to look at it through a table, I was kind of making a decision to allow its creativity to inform or surprise me about what some of the key things I might care about in terms of looking at the real dynamics involved. And this is very cool, right? This is actually a great lens. It really allows you to really quickly get your hands around it as well. And as you're noticing, there's no right answer here. These are all things that you can explore. And by the way, I could just do these each individually and it would be saving each one. So I could actually end up with 5 lenses here in 5 minutes. Now this one, phases, is exactly what it sounds like. If I want to say, okay, break it into phases, phase one, phase two, phase three, let's see what it looks like. Right. So phase one is the emergence of internal tensions. Phase two is heightened conflicts and external pressures, and then phase three is the final split in the aftermath. You can imagine all the things you might want to look at in terms of phases. You know, give me the phases of a diet, give me the phases of a war situation that was happening or a historical situation. Give me the phases of change in something. Give me the phases of growth. So tons of things can be refracted through the phases lens. And then finally, polarity. And this is a fascinating one because it's looking at what are the kind of the um, tensions, two competing positive tensions that are occurring in the situation that form a bit of a polarity. And there's all kinds of ways that this gives you also new information. And here it's picking the polarity between, you know, sort of the group and the individual, collaborative unity, individual autonomy. And it's saying, okay, the positive parts of the collaboration are up here. The positive parts of the individual autonomy are here. But here are the parts that if we don't attend to them, if we ignore the opposite pole, these are the risks we get. If we ignore the opposite pole, if we ignore collaboration, these are the risks we get. So again, another really powerful lens shape, one that you could imagine bringing forward anytime you see 2 points of view that are sort of competing for attention, and you want to see, all right, they both have something positive to offer here. How do we harmonize them? Because a polarity is something that we want to harmonize. So you could use a polarity lens shape in many different situations. And again, you can use a lot of these lens shapes across many of these different sort of mental models or framework types. Even though I'm doing all explain this, you'll notice that I could just as easily take this same context, this same topic, why did the Smiths break up? I could say, let's instead put that through the mental model, key questions to ask. So far it's been explaining it. Instead, let's do key questions to ask. And let's put that into, let's go back to quadrants. And now it's going to give me questions I should be asking in all four quadrants. And here it goes, right? These are the questions related to personal motivations and psychology, emotional states, and cognition. These are questions related to social dynamics, cultural values, and what was going on inside the band's kind of camaraderie. In the lower right, we're getting stuff in the industry and the economic conditions, system issues, et cetera. And the upper right, behaviors, actions, critical incidents, et cetera. This kind of mental models, kind of framework, key questions asked, is really, really powerful for when you're first getting into a subject and you're kind of rooting around in it. To just say, okay, what's the landscape? And by asking yourself these kinds of questions, by having the AI tell you which questions you should be asking, especially in a quadrants format where it's really doing a very comprehensive job of surveying the territory, it really gives you a very powerful way to very quickly get a sense of what you might be thinking about. So again, that's the framework shapes. You can see, hopefully, why we give you the power that we do to really kind of have a lot of different types of methods of refracting these perspectives and across, obviously, all these different mental models and frameworks. So hopefully that helps in your choices of which framework shapes to use and why. Thanks for being here.